My parents kicked me out of the house just so my golden child sister could live there, even though I was the one who bought the place. But karma caught up quicker than anyone expected. I'm 40 now, and for the past 17 years I've worked my way up to a senior management role at one of the top investment banks on Wall Street. This story's really about the tangled relationship I have with my sister Lindsay, who's 5 years older than me, and with our parents, who are both pushing 75. It's also about the house I recently bought for them, a house that ended up being the center of never-ending family drama. To make sense of it all, I need to take you back to where it started. When I was born, my parents were already in their late 30s. I wasn't exactly part of the plan. My mom would often remind me, not cruelly, but with a sort of detached tone that somehow hurt more. We already had Lindsay, and she was more than enough. Lindsay was 10 at the time. I'd hear those words as she packed Lindsay's dance bag or helped her organize college application papers. Little offhand comments like that, gentle reminders that I was never really meant to be there, cast a long shadow over my childhood. Truth is, I might not have been born at all if it weren't for my maternal grandparents insisting they keep me. My parents saw me as a burden, something they hadn't signed up for. But my grandparents? They were over the moon about having another grandchild. I always felt like an afterthought in our home, and that feeling showed up early. Every morning, my parents would drop me off at my grandparents' place. It was the same routine. My dad would jingle his keys, glance at my grandfather, and say you wanted her, before heading out to work. She's all yours. That house became more than just a stopgap. It was home, the one place I felt seen and loved. My grandparents fed me, looked after me, picked me up after school, helped me with my homework, and even made time to take me to the park. My grandpa, who had been a math professor before retiring, spent hours teaching me how numbers worked. He used to say, numbers don't lie. They'll tell you the truth when people won't. I didn't realize it then, but those lessons ended up shaping my whole future. Every afternoon, I'd sit at the kitchen table with my grandma. She'd patiently go over my school assignments, making sure I truly understood everything. Her calm never seemed to run out. She used to be a high school teacher before she retired, and she'd say with quiet strength, knowledge is the one thing no one can take away from you. She also taught me how to cook, not because it was expected, but because it was a way to be creative and show love. Those afternoons in the kitchen, talking about school and learning to measure ingredients just right, turned into some of my most treasured memories. My parents, always tired and slightly annoyed about the drive, would pick me up late at night. And just before I left each evening, my grandmother would hug me tight and say, "Rachel, you're the best thing that ever happened to us." For a little while, wrapped up in her arms, I could forget that I wasn't really wanted anywhere else. They became my anchor, the emotional support I lacked at home. My grandfather would often remind me, some of life's best surprises aren't planned. Meanwhile, Lindsay was getting ready for her bright future, and I was just learning how to survive in the background. My sister didn't mistreat me outright. She simply acted like I wasn't there. She'd sprawl out on the couch, chatting away on the phone about emails and college stuff, totally oblivious while I sat nearby, quietly playing with my dolls in the corner of our shared living room. The way my parents treated the two of us couldn't have been more different. I'd hear my mom proudly gushing about Lindsay's accomplishments to relatives or friends. Lindsay got straight A's again. Lindsay made the debate team. Lindsay just got accepted to her dream college. They were front row regulars at her school events, science fairs, debates, everything. But when it came to mine, the excuses rolled out like clockwork. We're too tired. We have to work. You understand, don't you? My grandparents were the ones who showed up for me, beaming with pride, cheering me on at every school concert or awards night. I hoped things might change once Lindsay left for college. I thought maybe then, with her gone, I'd finally be seen. I was wrong. Instead of being noticed, I became the help. By the time I was 15, I wasn't just the invisible daughter, I was also the full-time housekeeper. Most days, I'd barely step through the door after school before my mom would call out, "Rachel, clean the house. Start with the bathrooms." All the chores that used to be Lindsay's now landed on me, plus a bunch more. I learned every setting on the washing machine like the back of my hand. Cleaning, cooking, keeping the place running for parents who barely spoke to me became an endless cycle. If I ever hesitated, my dad would snap, "You live here. You need to do your part. Your sister always did." By then, I had graduated from cleaning to cooking. It wasn't a slow transition. One day, my mom just stopped making dinner. One morning she said, "You're old enough now. We expect dinner on the table when we get home." Even with everything on my plate, I kept my grades high. My teachers noticed my knack for economics and math and encouraged me to enter academic competitions. My grandpa stepped in again, taking extra time to teach me complex concepts far beyond my grade. "You've got a gift with numbers," he'd tell me with a twinkle in his eye. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Thinking about college became my way out. After the dishes were done each night, I'd go to my room and lose myself in college websites, dreaming of walking through new campuses, far away from chores and the constant cold silence. My work paid off. Even with everything going on at home, I kept my straight A's. At 17, I started receiving acceptance letters from some of the best colleges in the country, especially those with top finance programs. Then came Lindsay's engagement. One Sunday, she burst through the front door with a big grin and a tall, well-dressed guy in tow. She squealed like a kid opening presents. "Mom, Dad, this is Ethan, we're getting married." You'd think she just won the lottery the way she said it. My mom started crying tears of joy, and my dad jumped up like his chair was on fire, already pulling out his phone to call relatives. "We'll take care of everything," my mom said, wrapping Lindsay in a tight hug. "Our first daughter's wedding has to be perfect." For months, our house was taken over by wedding plans. Every conversation was about guest lists, venues, flower arrangements, you name it. There was no holding back. Fancy clothes, high-end vendors, top-tier everything. Money flowed like it came from a tap. Even though my grandparents showed up at the wedding, you could tell they weren't all that impressed. I saw my grandpa give a slow head shake at the champagne fountain, and Grandma frowned at some over-the-top sculpture that probably cost more than a year of tuition. But they kept their thoughts to themselves. I think they already saw where this was all heading. The day my college acceptance letters came in, I laid the 3 envelopes out on the dinner table, nervous and proud. My heart was pounding. "That's nice," my mom said, barely looking up from her plate. "But we can't help with that. We spent all our savings on your sister's wedding. Even had to take out a loan. There's nothing left for college." I blinked. "But you paid for Lindsay's college," I said softly, barely more than a whisper. "That was different," she replied in a patronizing tone. "We saw potential in her." Silence dropped over the table like a thick curtain. "You should get a job," my dad added, still chewing. "Save some money. Take out loans. That's what responsible adults do." Up until that moment, I'd never dared to leave the table without permission. But this time I stood up, grabbed my phone with shaky hands, and called my grandmother. Minutes later, I was walking through their familiar front door, tears running down my face. My grandpa's face hardened as he listened to what happened, but I also saw a flicker in his eyes, like he'd been expecting this. When I finished, he gave Grandma a knowing look, then took my hand and said, "Rachel, we've been saving for your education since the day you were born. We knew this might happen." He walked into his study and came back with a folder filled with bank statements, years of careful saving. "Pick whichever school you want," he said. "We've got you covered." That night, I packed a few bags and moved in with them. When I told my parents I was leaving, they barely turned from the TV. "Whatever you think is best," my mom said, eyes still fixed on the screen. And for the first time, I thought I heard relief in her voice. What followed were some of the most important years of my life. I enrolled in one of the country's best business schools, choosing to study financial analysis. Part of me wanted to understand money better because of how badly my parents had handled theirs. My professors noticed my drive right away. I stayed after class, diving into complex financial theories and case studies. For the first time outside my grandparents, someone saw real promise in me. I landed competitive internships at top financial firms during my college summers. Each internship brought new challenges and new opportunities. Senior managers took note of how sharp I was with numbers, how careful I was with details. During a performance review at Morgan Stanley, my manager said, "You've got a feel for this. We'd love to have you back." Outside of weekly calls with my grandparents, I kept my head down and focused on my studies. I didn't think much about my family. After graduation, I landed a job at one of the top firms in New York. I couldn't believe the starting salary. I found a clean, safe one-bedroom apartment. Every morning, I'd wake up thankful that I only had to make breakfast for myself. I poured myself into my work. The promotions and bonuses came steadily, more than I ever thought possible. Within 5 years, I'd moved into a senior position, managing complex portfolios and building solid relationships with major clients. People in the industry started recognizing my name. I was known for being sharp, thoughtful, and strategic. Every success felt like a quiet answer to the doubt my parents had shown me growing up. Meanwhile, bits and pieces trickled in from my grandparents about how Lindsay was doing. Her marketing career wasn't going the way she'd hoped. And Ethan, well, he couldn't seem to hold down a job. They were constantly asking my parents for money. One day, during our usual Sunday call, Grandma told me your mother drained her retirement account last month to help them with rent. They just can't say no to her. Things only got worse from there. Even with my parents helping, Lindsay and Ethan couldn't make ends meet. Eventually, they moved back into my old bedroom with their 7-year-old twins. My parents, who used to brag about Lindsay every chance they got, were now financially supporting her whole family. As for me, I stayed in my lane, focused on my work, on building the life I'd carved out from scratch. Every milestone felt like a quiet win. I wasn't the disappointment my parents had once assumed I'd be. By my mid-30s, I had serious savings and enough set aside for a down payment on a home of my own. Then everything changed. My grandfather died suddenly from a massive heart attack. It hit me hard. He had been more than just a grandfather, he had been my rock, the father figure who truly stood by me. After losing him, my grandmother seemed to fade. She followed him less than 2 months later. To me, they weren't just grandparents. They were my real parents. And just like that, they were both gone. At the funeral home, while I was arranging my grandma's service, I heard a voice behind me. "Rachel, do you need help with the arrangements?" It was my mom. I turned to see her looking older, more tired than I remembered. A part of me wanted to tell her no, to send her away. But something in her face stopped me. "Sure," I said. "That'd be nice." Over the next few days, as we planned the funeral, my parents started to open up. They finally admitted they were struggling. One afternoon, while picking out flowers, my dad said quietly, "We haven't been doing so well financially since we retired. We're barely scraping by," my dad admitted, his voice low, before bringing up Lindsay's twins. It hit me then. My sister and her whole family were still living off my parents, draining what little money they had left. About a week after Grandma's funeral, we gathered in this dark, wood-paneled office for the reading of her will. Lindsay and Ethan were slouched in matching recliners next to my parents. I sat across from them, stiff-backed and quiet. You could cut the tension with a knife. The room smelled like old books and furniture polish, like the kind of place where secrets get passed down. We didn't know it yet, but that day would mark the beginning of a permanent shift in our family. Mr. Patterson, the notary, adjusted his glasses and started reading in a flat, even voice. I expected a bunch of legal talk, but what came next made everyone sit up straighter. "To our beloved granddaughter Rachel," he read, "we leave our house at 1560 Maple Street and the sum of $200,000. Silence dropped over the room like a bomb. My mom's grip on my dad's arm tightened so hard her knuckles turned white. Lindsay's jaw hung open in shock. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat and continued. He looked directly at my mom and said, "And a personal note from Mr. Henderson to his daughter Margaret." The message read, "Remember, Margaret, we gave you $200,000 when you needed it most. Just as we respected your needs back then, we ask that you now respect our final decision." The color drained from my mother's face. Lindsay and Ethan glanced at each other in panic. My father just stared at the floor like it might offer him a way out. Later, out in the parking lot, my parents approached me as Mr. Patterson packed up his papers. Gone was the polite calm they'd had while planning the funeral. What replaced it was something much more desperate. "Rachel, sweetheart," my mom said, her voice unsteady. "You have to understand, we always thought we'd inherit the house. We're really struggling," my dad added, running a hand through his gray hair. "Between the mortgage and helping Lindsay's family, it's been tough. We were counting on that house." Lindsay jumped in, of course, talking about how her kids needed a yard to play in. I didn't say a word. I just got in my car and drove away. In the weeks that followed, I kept thinking about my grandparents' final gift. That house held so many memories, but it was way too big for just me, and my life was closer to the city now anyway. During our weekly calls, I started learning more about how deep my parents' financial problems had become. Helping Lindsay had bled them dry. They were falling behind on their own mortgage. I spent a lot of time thinking. In the end, I made a decision. I'd sell my grandparents' house and, with that money and some of my savings, buy my parents a new home, a smaller, one-story place with a garden. Something comfortable, easy to manage, and warm for their retirement years. When I told them my idea, I wasn't expecting their reaction. They really cried. Tears of joy. A few weeks of house hunting later, we found the perfect place. A beautiful ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood, with wide doorways and no stairs. After we closed on it, my parents couldn't stop talking about how happy they were. "We've got to have a proper housewarming," my dad said. "It's the least we can do after all you've done." "That would be lovely," I said, already planning to surprise them by handing over the deed at the party. "Just tell me when." Days passed. Then weeks. I had a full workload, but I kept checking my calendar expecting the invitation. "We're still planning," my mom would say when I asked. "You know how these things take time." "We want it to be perfect," Dad would chime in. "We'll let you know soon." But something about their answers didn't sit right with me. One night, after yet another vague phone call, I typed Lindsay's name into Facebook. We weren't friends online, hadn't been in years. But her page was public. Right there at the top was a post from just a few hours earlier. "So excited for Mom and Dad's housewarming party this Saturday. Can't wait to celebrate in this beautiful new home." I scrolled through the comments, dozens of replies, friends and relatives saying they'd be there. Photos showed decorations going up, caterers being hired. It was clearly no last-minute gathering. They had been planning it for weeks. My fingers shook as I called my mother. "Hi, Mom," I said as calmly as I could. "Just checking in, do you have a date for the housewarming yet?" "Oh, not just yet, sweetheart," she said casually. "Probably in a few weeks. We're still working out the details." Everyone knew, except me. As Saturday crept closer, I wrestled with what to do. Should I confront them? Let it go? How could they exclude me like this after everything? But in the end, I found out the truth another way. That Saturday, I parked a block away from the house I bought for them. Through the windows, I could see people laughing and mingling, Lindsay's friends, old family friends, even neighbors. My dad was giving people tours of the house. My mom stood at the front door in her pearl necklace, greeting everyone like the queen of suburbia. Twinkle lights lined the porch. A big banner read, "Welcome home." The music and chatter spilled out onto the street. I hadn't been invited. I sat in my car for a long while, watching Lindsay's twins dart through the crowd. Then I noticed the moving boxes inside stacked in a corner, clearly labeled in Lindsay's handwriting. They were already moving in. I took a deep breath and slipped in through the side door. The scent of fresh flowers and catered food filled the house. I followed the sound of my dad's voice into the living room. "After all these years of hard work, we finally did it. Bought our dream home. And don't forget Lindsay," my mother chimed in. "She helped so much with the down payment. Such a wonderful daughter. Always putting family first." Then in a sharper voice, she added, "Not like some people." Someone must have asked about me because she said, "Our younger daughter hasn't lifted a finger. Too busy chasing her career to care about family." Standing in the doorway, heat burned in my face. Everyone turned when I finally spoke up. "Actually, I think you've got that backwards." You could have heard a pin drop. The entire room froze. My dad was the first to react, forcing a tight smile. "Rachel, what a surprise." "Yeah," I said, stepping further in, "especially since you forgot to invite me to the housewarming party for the house I bought." Silence stretched even longer after that. Lindsay's husband suddenly became fascinated with his shoes. One of the twins tugged at Lindsay's sleeve, whispering, "Why does everyone look upset?" "You bought it, sure," my mom said sharply, "but it's ours now, isn't it? You can't expect eternal gratitude." My dad, emboldened by her words and nods from the crowd, added, "That's right. And to be honest, you're not welcome here. This is a family gathering. And Lindsay and her family will be living here too," my mother chimed in. "They've already sold their place. It's all arranged. The twins need a stable home." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. "You seem confused," I said, holding it out. "Here are the deed and ownership papers. This house is mine. I never signed it over to anyone." My mother's face turned from pale to ghostly white. My father started rambling something about obligations to family. Lindsay, who had been grinning just moments earlier, suddenly looked like the rug had been pulled out from under her. Even though my hands were shaking, I kept my voice steady. "I was actually planning to give the house to you tonight," I said. "I thought maybe this could be a fresh start. A way to heal. But tonight just showed me nothing's changed." "You can't do this," my mom shouted, her voice cracking into a high-pitched screech. "We're your parents." "No," I said quietly, "you're just the people who gave birth to me. My real parents, my grandparents, taught me what family actually means. They also taught me how to manage money. That's why I own this house. And you don't." I turned toward the stunned guests, most of them standing awkwardly, unsure where to look. "I'm sorry, but this party is over," I said. "This is my home. I'm asking everyone to leave." One by one, they filed out, my parents, Lindsay, Ethan, the twins, and all their friends and guests. Some in tears. Some just uncomfortable. I stood on the porch and watched as the cars pulled away, until the street was finally empty. The decorative lights still twinkled in the yard, like nothing had happened, mocking me in their quiet cheerfulness. Inside, the place was a mess. Half-empty cups, dirty plates, food scattered on counters. The home I had bought as a peace offering had turned into the final fracture between us. A few weeks later, I found out my parents used the money from selling their old house to buy a small apartment. Lindsay, Ethan, and the twins moved in with them. 3 generations squeezed into a spacement for 2. At first, they called me constantly, voicemails that bounced back and forth between bitter blame and emotional guilt trips. "You've become so heartless. Just like your grandparents warned us you would." That was the kind of guilt-laced message they left me. Over and over. "How could you do this to your own family?" I blocked their phone numbers, deleted their emails, and removed them from social media. I was done. The house stood empty now, a quiet reminder of everything that had gone wrong between us. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a real estate agent. I've decided it's not worth trying to fix something that's been broken for decades. Some relationships, like faded photos in an old album, are best left in the past. One promise I've made to myself is this: when I have children of my own, they'll never have to earn my love or fight for my attention. I'll love them fully without conditions, just like my grandparents loved me. That Saturday night laid bare every heartbreaking truth about my family. They threw a housewarming party in the home I had bought for them, without even telling me. Through the windows, I saw guests laughing, food catered, drinks flowing, and Lindsay's moving boxes stacked in plain view. Then I heard my father telling people after all our hard work, we finally bought our dream home. I entered through the side door unnoticed. Inside, my mother praised Lindsay for supposedly helping with the down payment. When someone asked where I was, she said casually, "Oh, Rachel's too busy with her career to care about family." That one line captured everything, every childhood slight, every moment I was treated like an afterthought, every time Lindsay was put on a pedestal while I was ignored. Standing there, I'd never seen things so clearly. They had planned to move my sister's entire family into my property without even asking me. Actually, I said aloud, stopping the party cold, "I think there's been a misunderstanding about who bought this house." The looks on their faces said it all: shock, then embarrassment, and finally anger. My mother was the first to speak, her voice sharp with entitlement. "What's done is done. The house is ours now and Lindsay's kids need the space." I pulled out the deed and ownership documents. "No," I said. "This house belongs to me. I never transferred it to you. I was going to give it to you tonight. But clearly that was a mistake." "You can't do this," my mom cried out, panicked. "We're your parents. We have rights." "The only rights you have," I said calmly, "are the ones I choose to give you. And right now, I'm asking everyone to leave." Chaos followed. Guests scrambled, still holding plates of food. Lindsay's kids started crying. My dad tried to play the dignified host, herding people toward the door. "How could you do this to your own family?" My mom yelled one last time, her go-to weapon, guilt. But this time, it didn't work. They moved into a cramped apartment soon after. 3 generations crammed into a space meant for 2. The calls started immediately. My dad demanded I reconsider. Lindsay begged, crying, asking me to think of her children. My mom accused me of being heartless. I blocked them all. That house, once meant to be a gift, a fresh start, became the turning point. The moment I finally let go. A month later, I sold it. The money went straight into my future. Some people asked if I'd ever try to fix things, if I'd forgive them. But I realized that forgiveness doesn't always mean letting toxic people back into your life. Sometimes the real act of forgiveness is letting yourself walk away without guilt. Before tucking away an old photo of my parents on their wedding day, I made a silent vow to my future children. They'll never know what it feels like to earn love or live in someone else's shadow. They'll never wonder if they matter. With me, the cycle ends. I drove past their apartment one last time. Lindsay's twins were playing in the tiny courtyard. A flicker of sadness hit me, but it wasn't for what I lost. It was for what never truly existed. My grandparents always said, family is about love, respect, and showing up for each other, not just blood. And that's what I carry with me as I turn this page of my life. Love should be given freely, not demanded. Family is earned through kindness, not birth. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. I didn't read the last letter they sent. I tossed it in the trash, unopened. Whatever it said didn't matter anymore. For the first time in my life, I chose me over chasing their approval. There's no space in my future for the kind of love that comes with strings attached. I'm building something better now. A future that's rooted in respect, in real connection, and in the kind of unconditional love I was lucky enough to learn from my grandparents. The era of being the family's afterthought is over. From here on out, I'm writing my own story. And this is just the beginning. Thanks for sticking around and listening to my story. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss more true life stories just like this one.